am joined now by Jake Heffernan, who's coming off a UD win over Justin Linn at Fury FC 47. What's up, my man? How are you?
Hey there, doing well, doing well.
Big win, as I was saying before we went live here. You had some time off, so it must have just been nice to get back in the cage and compete, right?
Yeah. Honestly, the 2 years in the loss column is definitely one of those things where, as a professional martial artist that takes my career very serious on the ends of making it to the highest caliber of fighting, to be in that loss column for 2 years was not fun to think about mentally. So it's nice to be back in the win column and feeling comfortable with my career. So it was a long time coming.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I want to dive into a little bit more of that here shortly, but first, let's talk about this fight. I mean, I'm sure you're going out there just like every fight, looking for a finish, but this did go the distance. So in some ways, after such a long layoff, that maybe have been a good thing for you. All in all, looking back at it now, how pleased are you with the outcome?
Actually, of course, always looking for the finish, but I actually am pleased with the outcome because again, like you said, when you have that long off, the 15 minutes actually wasn't a bad situation. It was, we wanted to get my feet wet for my first fight back, but we didn't want to have an opponent that was too easy to, deal with. So we could really test, one, the hands to see where it's at after the injury, and then two, to make sure every range of emotion is felt in the fight, as well as every situation. And honestly, I feel like I dealt with that, especially getting out of the guillotine in the beginning of the fight. And then from there, just, a little bit of stand up, a little bit of clinch work, a little bit of throws and regular takedowns and ground and pound. And so the 15 minutes, wanted to find the finish somewhere in that time, but not mad with the fact that I got to go all 15 after 2 years off.
How did you feel your cardio was? Was it up to where you would normally have it, or did you feel like maybe you still needed a little bit more work in that aspect?
You know what? Feeling the fight fatigue after not feeling it for 2 years was definitely a factor. I didn't get tired. I probably could have actually gone another 2 rounds. I am in literally the best shape of my life. I took this fight camp extremely serious. When Alex Morono fought Donald Cerrone, I was already in camp helping him for those fight camps, getting him ready, just in case we found an opponent earlier. So I made sure that I was in absolute peak condition. But then as soon as the fight started and we get that first grappling exchange going, that's when you kind of a little bit of a reality check happened where I was like, oh, I haven't felt this in a while. And so there was definitely a lot of patience in the fight, not a lot of explosion times, which is something that actually me and my coaches sat back and were like, you know what, this needs to change. I understand that you were off for a little while, but you didn't hit him enough. And I was like, all right, I'll make that change. So definitely going to look to do more damage from the top next time. But yeah, the fight fatigue was definitely something that was a rude awakening to re-experience for sure. Kind of you never forget how to ride a bike, but the first time you jump on one in a while, you're like, ooh, my legs are a little tired.
Yeah, that's really ironic that you say that because my 60-year-old mother just hopped on a bike for the first time in years, and thank God she had her helmet on because she was doing the same thing. So very, very good analogy there, my friend. Now,
Yeah.
As far as Justin in cage in the fight, did he do anything that maybe took you by surprise that you weren't expecting, or did the fight kind of go the way that maybe you thought it would throughout the duration?
Honestly, we didn't know he was a brown belt going in. He does his whole social media under a different name. And so for the duration of the fight camp, we could never find a social media on him, which is kind of like how you get the background information to be like, oh, okay, this is when he got his brown belt, because people will usually post pictures and stuff. And we just couldn't find him. It turned out his name was under Mitchell. And so that's why I couldn't find him on Facebook. Maybe shouldn't have said that just now, but that's okay, But in any case, couldn't find him. And so when I was doing the different exchanges on the grappling and he was answering all the right ways, I mean, even I was trying to set up a Von Flue choke off the guillotine, of which he knew and got me back to guard, which is why I rolled to mount to escape. He was very savvy on the ground, which we didn't expect, but nothing that my level of jiu-jitsu was definitely obviously higher. Just there were some spots where I was like, oh man, he's controlling my hands just enough to not let me sink this choke in, or he's keeping his hips very mobile, so I can't exactly stick this mount the way that I usually do on people. So that was a little surprising to deal with his jiu-jitsu going into the first and second and third round. I mean, he really didn't quit till the third round.
Yeah, and well, hey, you got the victory, and I know that's what you came in the cage to do here, leading into this fight. Now, as far as the promotion goes, Fury UFC, one of the better promotions here across the country. How are their protocols and everything with COVID still kind of lingering around? Did you guys have to jump through a lot of hoops to get cleared to fight, or just run me through that a little bit?
I know the last two cards that they had, I was cornering for both of them, and so I know that those last two cards was much more strict. But I know the state opened up for my fight card, so we still had to get COVID tested. We had to make sure we were tested 48 hours prior to the fight and no sooner, just so that all the officials knew everybody was COVID free. And so did all of our corners and everything. So, I mean, everybody had to make sure that they were cleared from a COVID test. And then from there, we were able to, stay in our homes for the guys that were from the city. We didn't have to go lock down in the hotel this time around. But I know they were doing that last time just to keep the safety up, which is good. And then, of course, all of us kind of wore masks at the weigh-ins, and unless we were taking pictures and stuff like that. So we try to Fury does it very professionally. Eric runs a really professional show. So he really takes it serious. He wants to keep putting shows on, so he follows the rules really well.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And, as far as the celebration goes afterwards, Ben, did you get a chance to go out and do anything? Or are you one of those guys that maybe likes to just go back and live low key after a win?
One is it's Houston, Texas. It was Father's Day. So there wasn't a whole lot to do. Plus the card was a little early in the day. Didn't even end at nighttime. By the time we left, it was like 7 something. So I just me and my wife took the kids out. They actually ended up getting so fussy that by the time we made it about 5 minutes from the restaurant, we were like, let's just take them home and do Uber Eats tonight. So me and the wife went back home and we ordered some Denny's and got some disgusting pancakes that were covered in sugar, and I ate those and then felt terrible. And now I'm already back on my track to try to get back on the diet. There's going to be a few more cheat meals, don't get me wrong, but celebration wise, it's usually always just food, because we have to cut so much out during camp. Right. And then I am a family man, so partying is as hard as my wife wants to party.
There you go. Well, hey, that makes sense. It must be nice too to actually get a win on Father's Day with you being a family man. That must mean something pretty special to you.
Yeah, actually, this win also was the first victory I've achieved since my daughter was born. So on a side note, that fight was dedicated to my daughter, Zeppelin Wiley Heffernan. And she's my little lady, and she'll be my little fighter one day. And that win was 100% dedicated to her. She needed the victory for sure out of me. So she's dealt with a lot in the last 2 years as well.
That's fantastic. Well, congrats on the win there, man. Now, with things opening back up and there being fans in the arena, how do you feel like you would have adjusted if it was during COVID and you didn't have fans there and it was silent? Like, a lot of fighters had to deal with that. Like, are you one of those guys that feeds off the energy of the arena, or do you really not matter when you go in there? It's just all about business.
I definitely feed off the crowd. I specifically had my wife bring my 2-year-old daughter, Zeppelin, and my 4-year-old son, Ronan, just to get that extra little emotional push for the fight. But I have cornered Alex Morono for the last 3 UFC fights with no crowd. And so I've experienced like one at the highest level cornering in the UFC and seeing that, but seeing how they fight. And I'm not going to lie, it looks fun. It looks nice to not have everybody screaming their heads off at you. And I've fought out of town before. And my last fight was in Arizona, or the fight before this one was in Arizona, and they were booing me the whole time. And I'm like there to put on a show for everybody and have a good time. And they're like, boo, we hate you. And I'm like, I'm sorry. I'm going to go try to beat this guy up though. So, and hats off to my last opponent, Paris Stanford. He had a big crowd in there, and they were I was definitely like, whoa, calm down. I just want to fight for fun. So it's a catch-22. There's good moments. There's bad moments. I would definitely fight in front of a crowd and without a crowd. I think both present a fun emotional ride. I think you can zero in a little bit harder when there's no crowd, because of the fact that you can like hear every punch land. You can hear your footwork when you're on the canvas in the cage. So I love the crowd, but I wouldn't mind fighting without them, just because I think, there is a little loss of pressure for sure.
Well, who knows? Maybe you'll get that opportunity at Contender Series down the line. That would be a great way to scratch that itch, so to speak. Now, I do have to ask you too, man. This fight going into it, two losses in a row. Clearly, you had to go in there and snap that skid, get back on the winning track. Did you feel extra pressure to really go in there and do your thing, or did you just kind of want to go in there and just let it loose, regardless of the outcome?
Yeah, this was one of those fights where, because of almost dying from the injury outside of fighting, I just was so happy to fight again. It wouldn't have mattered what the outcome was. Of course, if I had gotten guillotined in the first 30 seconds, I would have been pretty upset and been like, okay, we got to fight immediately so I can try that again. But for me at this point, it was more so just to like do the thing that I love to do most, and do it with a smile on my face. Like, I started every round with a big old grin because I almost like lost my right hand. Like, they literally in the emergency room were like, we're gonna have to cut it off, and I was like, whoa, wait, pump the brakes, I need this. So it was one of those situations where I'm just so happy to be able to do this again. And then of course winning was important and is important, and proceeding forward on the career is always going to be number one. But this time I went in to have fun. That was the goal. That was when me and my coaches talked. They were like, look, man, yes, you're very close to getting signed, and there's a lot of opportunity after a win, but we just need to see if you can still do this. Like, can you still grapple just as hard? Can you still punch just as hard in that scenario? Because no matter how well you do in training, it's always different in the fight. And so that was something we had to like have that conversation. And honestly, that helped because I did go in to have fun, and that take a little bit of stress off of it. Because my last two fights was very, if you win, you get to the UFC. And then it was, it's still, if you win, you get to the UFC. And then this time it was, you know what, man, you almost lost your right hand, go out there and have a blast. And so that's what we did. And I had a blast.
Now, for anybody that is watching this that doesn't know, they're hearing you talking about almost dying and losing your hand. So you got to tell the story. You were shot in a hunting accident by someone that you know pretty well, and I think MMA fans know pretty well. So tell us the story, man. It's really very fascinating, and thank God everything's all right.
Yeah. So basically, I was out with my coaches, both my cornerman Alex Morono and Matthew Wald, and then one of our students, Graham. And basically, we were out hog hunting, having a great day shooting. All of us were carrying, high-powered rifles and high-powered handguns on our sides. And basically, after the hunt was over, we were finished shooting for the day. We're driving in a truck, and we hit some rough bumps on the road and at an incline, and Alex's gun slid out of his revolver, hit the truck bed, went off, and caught me in the elbow right here. And then from going in my elbow, it went up into my shoulder and settled. And I got a bunch of surgeries done. This is what this scar is. And then got everything taken care of. I got the bullet popped out a couple months later right here. And basically was told in the emergency room I would never fight again, would never move my hand for, they said it would be 2 years till I was able to make a fist. And so it was crazy. The bullet traveled through my brachial artery, so I bled quite a bit at the moment. Luckily, Alex was there, because as soon as we realized that I had been shot, he literally grabbed my arm with his bare hands and stuck his thumb up into the bullet hole and kept me from bleeding out. And then they got a tourniquet and, tied me up and then got me into an ambulance and then from there into a helicopter and then got me evac to Houston. So it was a crazy situation. It was about 4 hours of travel time before I was even seen by a doctor and given pain medicine. So the whole thing was very crazy to deal with. And I'm sure from the outside, all the guys that were there, Matthew and Wald and Alex Morono and Graham, just watching like, oh my gosh, we just killed Jake. And so it was not a fun situation, but definitely showed my toughness, because the whole time I was just like, oh man, that hurt. So yeah.
Did you feel like when that was going, that 4-hour time period, that there was a chance that you could bleed out? Is that something that was going through your mind? Because that has to be a really traumatic, scary situation.
Yeah, actually, it was weird. About 30 minutes after they got me all secured and tied up with it was actually a shirt that they used for the tourniquet because we were out in the woods. They used that, and I was like pretty sure I was gonna pass away. And I actually, like, I have a family, so I have life insurance and all that. So the whole time I was just like, man, I'm glad I never miss a payment on my life insurance. That was the main thought in my head, because I was like, we don't know how much blood I lost, and this hurts, because at that point the pain was 100%. The adrenaline and the shock only lasts like 10 minutes. And so I'm sitting there just like moaning in pain. And then even getting into the helicopter, they were like, this is a very time sensitive thing. We need to get you there as soon as possible because you could still bleed out internally, because we just tied it off. It wasn't till I got into the actual Memorial Hermann downtown Houston emergency room where they had the specialists there. When they walked in, they were like, hey, you're in the perfect place. Like, even if we took everything off and you started bleeding out right now, like, we got a whole bunch more blood here. You're fine. So you're good. And that was at the 4-hour mark. So, I mean, it was definitely very upsetting to deal with. And then they were also talking about cutting my arm off, and, because of the possible damage before they took any x-rays or anything. And so I was in a state of shock, and then a state of fear, and then thinking I might pass out or die was a constant factor. I was getting sick the whole time. But it was at the moment this guy actually walked in, and he was the one that was like, you're in the right place. But he was like, hey, I looked you up. I know who you are. I don't worry, we'll save your right hand. I want to see you fight again. Like, the dude was a fight fan for the local scene. So luckily, he was able to calm me down. And at that point I was like, cool, I'm all right. And so
was that a doctor? Was that a doctor?
He wasn't a doctor. He was one of the the guys that give you the medicine, basically, to take the pain away or to make it pass out before surgery. I think they're called anestheticians. Mm-hmm. Don't quote me. Anesthesiologists. There we go. It's my wife in the background. but yeah. So as soon as that guy came in, and unfortunately I don't remember his name, because they pumped me up full of drugs after that and made me pass out. So, whoever that guy is, if he's watching, I super appreciate it, because you really took a load off my shoulders at that point, for sure.
Did your wife know what was going on during that 4-hour time period? Or like, did Alex or any of your other friends that were there, were they able to like contact her, or did she find out after the fact?
Actually, it was one of those scenarios where my friends were like, what do we tell Nikita? And so they called her and they were like, hey, Jake got like skimmed by a bullet, but he's good. Like, he's fine. He'll be okay. Don't worry about it. She's like, oh, okay, cool. And at first she was like, no big deal. I'll just go see him when he's ready. Are you guys going to drive him home? And they're like, well, no, he left in an ambulance. And she's like, okay. So first red flag. And then she got on the phone with another person, which was the wife of another one of the guys that was there. And they were like, no, he got hit by the bullet and he had to be life flighted. So you need to call the hospital. And so she ended up having to go through like different waves of them trying to figure out how to exactly break the whole situation to her. And, that was unfortunate. Probably could have been handled more like a Band-Aid to just rip it off all at once, I think. But luckily she's a trooper. She's extremely mentally tough. And I think she also knows how tough I am. So she was able to kind of keep everything cool and collected. And she was the first person I woke up to when I came out of surgery. And, she was a little shaken up, but she took it like a champ. So
yeah, that sounds like you got yourself a good wife there. I gotta say, man, one of the things that I really admire about mixed martial artists, just as athletes, is the heart that you guys have to endure to go through some of the bad positions you have to be in when you're competing inside the cage. I haven't fought, amateur or professionally yet, but I've trained a little bit. And when I'm on bottom and someone's in full mount and they're throwing down punches and elbows, I feel like I'm going to die. I hate it. I'm just looking for any way out. Did you kind of use your experience of just the toughness that you have as a human being, everything that you've endured to really kind of push yourself in that situation? Because other people, they may not have been able to dig as deep as you, because that's a long time period to go through that.
Yeah, it's funny. The injury before that, in the fight before that, was a broken leg in the first round of my last fight, and in that, fighting on a broken leg for 3 rounds, and then still getting triangled in the last 40 seconds of the fight. I mean, that made me think that I was ultra tough. Like, I thought after that fight, I was like, nothing will ever faze me, because I see these dudes getting calf kicked in the UFC and they're sitting down on the ground, or I see these dudes rolling their ankles in the middle of a fight and they're sitting down getting TKO'd, and I'm like, what are these guys doing? Like, oh, my poor little leg hurts. And then I get shot a couple months later. I'm like, dude, nothing in these fights phases me. You could literally break my arm. I could break my hand on your face. I could break my leg again, and I will continue to trudge forward and fight. So it definitely is one of those things where, having dealt with that scenario outside of the cage for the hours and hours of agony and pain, it makes fighting less scary. It does. It makes everything less scary. Like, I mean, even I've already purchased more guns, and I have a hunting trip coming up, actually. So I'm not in any way fazed by shooting at all. So it definitely helps with the mental toughness in every aspect, for sure. Because there's no fear. And even my wife, she gets nervous for the fights, but she's like, she literally just repeats to me all throughout my camp, my cut. She was my cut buddy this time as well. She just repeats to me, she's like, you're literally the toughest person I know. Like, we don't have anything to worry about. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. I am literally the toughest person that we know. So like, I don't know anybody tougher than me. If you can present somebody that's tougher than me, I would love to shake their hand, because
Yeah,
we've been through a lot, obviously.
I would say so. You'd be hard pressed to find someone as tough as you are, sir. No doubt about that. Now, first of all, thank you for sharing that whole story. I mean, really, I don't know the right words to explain it all. But thank God that you're okay and you're back to doing what you love. What are the goals now, man? You're back in the win column. Before you got injured and then you had that accident, the goal was the UFC. I mean, how far away do you feel you are from that now?
I still feel like I'm always just one fight away. That performance that I had, though there wasn't a finish, I think I definitely showed that I can still move around with the best of them. I didn't look sloppy striking in any way. I feel like the reason I got a 10-8 round was because I thoroughly beat him in the striking in the second round, and then still took him down and took his back and mounted him. And so I still feel like I'm right there with the top caliber guys. So like I said, just one fight away. I wouldn't be surprised if they called me and said, "Would you take a short notice fight at this point?" So we're always staying ready. The next fight, again, is just maybe a little bit more seriousness on it, but it's still at the scenario of so happy that I get to just do this still and have the ability that the UFC is inevitable. I know that I'm on the top caliber of Houston fighters, and then so just knowing that and how big Houston's getting, I mean, it's just a matter of time. They'll eventually hit me up and be like, "Hey, Contender Series." They know that I do well and I push hard, because I mean, there's just no doubt in my mind I'll get there eventually. So we're looking for the next fight with Fury, and then again, wouldn't be surprised if they called me up in the middle of a camp or right after the next win. So
When is Fury's next card? Is that a couple months away, or is it a little bit sooner?
I know they're going to do their amateur series next, which is next week, and then I believe they have the July 25th card, and then after that the August 8th card that I think they'll have a special guest at. I'm not sure, and so either I think July we're going to just kind of kind of let the team rest because a lot of us competed this month. And then August will be the next one that I'm looking for. So maybe the August 8th card with Fury if they can get me an opponent. I'd love to fight for the title for Fury. I feel like I'm one of the top contenders, even coming off the 2 losses. I think I have the best record. I think I had the best record on the card for that Fury card. So I'd be down to see if somebody wants to challenge me for that strap. But
yeah,
I
like it. Yeah, I like that. What is the cut like for you to 45? Is it pretty easy, or do you have to kind of keep your diet dialed in so you can make it on short notice?
One is that I try to never cut more than 10 pounds because I had bad cuts before from more than 10 pounds, and it's never fun. This camp was probably, I was the most strict I've ever been diet wise because I didn't want any mistakes. But cutting weight is never fun. It's the one thing about the sport that I wish that I didn't have to do. I hate cutting weight. I have no trouble saying it. I'm one of those guys during the cut that it'll get to a point where I'm like, guys, I don't like doing this. I hate it. It's stupid. But at the same end, I don't have trouble getting to 45. I used to fight at 35 actually when I was an amateur. So getting to 45 is very comfortable for me. Again, I don't like to do it, but it's not an issue at all. So that's why kind of staying in camp this last like probably 3 months has been pretty simple, and the diet was pretty simple because we just wanted so badly to get back in the win column. I thought to myself every day, like, how can I do 1% better? And that some of that doing 1% better is not cheating on the diet, not eating the nasty foods, and just making sure that everything is dialed in correctly. So this camp was definitely the best diet that I had and best cut that I had in a long time as well.
Well, that's great to hear, man. Again, very happy for your recent win. Jake Heffernan gets the UD win over Justin Linn at Fury FC 47 in his long-awaited and anticipated return to action. Pleasure interviewing you for the first time, my man. Before I do let you go, I want to give you the floor. Tell people where to follow you on social media, and if you have anyone to thank, the floor is yours.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's Jake GBTW on Twitter, and then Jake GBTW on Instagram. And then just Jake Heffernan, MMA fighter for Facebook. And then actually Rise and Grind is the logo you're seeing. That's like my little catchphrase for this camp. But Loaded Pistols was the creators of the shirt. They're the clothing company that follows Fury around with a couple other pro MMA shows. They have supported me for the last 2 years, literally not only giving me gear and clothing to train in, but just staying behind me during the injury and helping out. Beyond that, there's Iridium management has been behind me the whole entire 2 years, checking in with me almost every week just to make sure everything was going good and staying on track with getting back in shape and stuff. And then my sponsors as well, which is Vinnie Vincent Real Estate, and then Bayou City Tattoo Shop, and a few others as well, Sky God Productions and Vital Minds, and then Blissful Waters Float Center. If you guys haven't done the sensory deprivation tanks, you got to try those out. That definitely helps after a traumatic experience of getting shot. I floated more than a few times to like help with the PTSD, honestly, and it helped a lot. And again, just try it out. You guys got to get there. And then other than that, a couple other small sponsors from the gym, Gracie Baja, the Woodlands, just kind of helping me out and keeping me on track. And then, of course, just happy to thank my family, my wife, of course, and then my gym family, Alex Morono and Janice Morono. They pushed me forward and kept me going the whole time as well. So just a big shout out to everybody there. And then other than that, just thanks to all the fans and everybody who watched on Fight Pass.